So let me introduce our panel to you so that we can get started. I'm going to start with Chief Justice Harold D. Melton, and he is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia. And if any of you have attended a seminar that I have moderated, you know that I do not go through the background of the speakers. Instead, I tell you a fun fact about each of the speakers. And so Justice Melton's fun fact is that in 7th grade, he took off his own braces with wire cutters and pliers. Apparently, he did not want to wait for the orthodontist to do it. He decided it would be best to do that himself. Next we have Sarah Doyle, and she is the presiding judge on the Georgia Court of Appeals. And Justice Doyle is also a Gator. Go Gators. I'm not going to make many friends saying that, but go Gators. And in Justice Doyle's spare time, she likes to sit on her porch and read young adult fiction novels. She is currently reading The Chosen Ones by the author of the Divergent series. She hates to cook, and her husband, Jay, is an attorney. And they have 2 kids, Mary Donovan, who is 13, and Davis, who is 9. So if you see little ones come on her screen, know that they are supposed to be there. And then we have Chief Judge Christopher Brasher of the Superior Court of Fulton County. And Judge Brasher's hobbies include cooking, eating, wine, and travel. Obviously, he has not done the travel part this year. And his mom made all of her 3 boys learn how to cook before they went off to college. And Judge Brasher has worked in restaurants and tended bar, but he started out cooking 30 years ago, making barbecue, and quickly realized that he loved cooking. He has been in dinner and chef clubs over the years, and he loves pairing food and wine. Over the years, he has made French, Spanish, Caribbean, South Asian, Chinese, Korean, South American, California cuisine, and many others. His favorites are hearty Northern Italian dishes, but he loves to try new dishes and expand his repertoire. He still cooks a mean pork shoulder. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's highly unfair that we're having this virtually and you're talking about all of this food and we clearly can't have any of this food. And I think you did that on purpose to make us all feel bad about the leftovers we're all going to be having for dinner, and you're having this amazing meal. I don't know about you, but now I'm hungry. Next, we have Chief Judge Asha Jackson from the Superior Court of DeKalb County. And Judge Jackson says that she has no fun right now, which is not true. But when she is fun, she likes to travel the world, stay in nice hotels, and take dance classes. And last but certainly not least, we have Judge Susan Edline of the State Court of Fulton County. And Judge Edline is a huge fan of Will Ferrell movies, and she is such a big fan that she has her own elf costume, and that the ringtones for her kids and her husband are clips from the Will Ferrell movies. She is also a Peloton fanatic. So I appreciate that, Judge Edline. I also love Will Ferrell movies. So I know that you all join me in welcoming these judges, and we all give them a virtual round of applause for being here. And you know, I was looking at their bios today, and combined, we have 60 years of judicial experience in front of us, and that's really amazing. And so I know that we're going to learn a lot today. So I want to reach out to the panel now and ask them. I'm going to start with you, Justice Melton. I want to first ask you what we're just about halfway through 2020, and 2020 has been a rocky year for several folks, but can you tell me something that has been a high point for you for 2020? And this could be personal or professional. Tell me something that's been a high point for you. Oh, you need to unmute, Justice Melton.
All right, I'm with you. I'm not that old. It's really both. I grew up not really understanding what it meant to practice law, what it meant to be a lawyer, and was somewhat in awe of the concept of judges In fact, whenever I came to this court, to this day, the judges that were there when I got to the court, I never called by their first name. So I just have this sense of awe when it comes to judges. And then to be chief during a time of crisis like this, somewhat intimidated by the whole prospect of trying to provide some leadership in a time where it's urgent and critical. But the highlight for me has been just the ability to work with these great judges. They are amazing, and they've really increased the awe that I have for them. There's a time when I was talking to Judge Jackson maybe about 2-3 times a week when this thing hit, and the cab was getting hit pretty hard. And when a judge is faced with these types of real life challenges, it's conceptual for me, but it's real for her and them on the ground. And to see how they stand up under those situations has been a highlight for me. They've been tremendous in stepping up to the challenge on every occasion. And I have an opportunity to have a front row seat, and to see the kind of leadership we have across our state has been really good.
Thank you, Judge. What about you, Judge Doyle? Same question. What's a high point for you in 2020?
You told me it could be personal or professional, and I'm not nearly as serious or as important as Justice Melton is. So the high point and the low point have been the same. I have, by virtue of being stuck in my house, I have gotten to now live and work and become a teacher. So I am with my family 24 hours a day in the same location. And that really has been a highlight. It's, just sort of slowing down, being forced to slow down has been, a positive, I think. At the same time, it's also got its negatives because you're with each other 24 hours a day. So it's been a kind of an interesting learning experience. And then professionally, it was highlight in March to qualify unopposed after the unusual year I had, starting off running for a position on the Supreme Court, and then that not coming to fruition, and then lucking out and not having anyone run against me for the Court of Appeals. Was slept very well that Friday evening. So that's it.
Judge Brasher?
Sure. First, on a personal note, my youngest daughter turned 21 this year, so it was great to be able to celebrate with her, and it happened just a couple of weeks ago. So close enough toward where we are now that we were able to get some family together. So that was a great reason to do that. Professionally, I'll follow along with what Justice Melton said, and just to see how the judicial branch, along with the wonderful members of the bar who have supported us, has been able to respond to these challenges. I mean, it's really been heartening to see how folks have pitched in and been willing to kind of handle things as best we can. And, our court and many of the other courts around Metro Atlanta transitioned very quickly to using Zoom for as many things as we could. We stood up multiple Zoom channels to our jail and kept those processes going so that people didn't languish in jail. And so I'm just very proud of the ability that folks showed to adapt, improvise, and overcome, as they say.
I certainly, and maybe I'm alone in this, but I doubt it. I hadn't really heard of Zoom until the beginning of March. So I agree with you, Judge Brasher, that the legal community certainly has learned how to use Zoom very quickly. I certainly didn't take a class on it in law school, that's for sure. Judge Jackson.
So I want to echo all of the comments that have previously been made. It's really pushed us to step into our role as administrators, which is not something that we do necessarily full time. And I'm sure many of you feel this way, that, sometimes being at home means you're more busy because people have time to sit around and think about all of the tasks that they can get done in this virtual environment. And just to be able to adapt and to have the lawyers to adapt and kind of fall into place, and working with the judges, it has been, excuse me, my phone would ring when you called on me, which is common. It rings all the time. But it's been really great to work with Justice Melton and all the other judges around the state. So I will say this, my low is my ability to teach kindergarten. I suck at that. I have weathered the storm, and my kindergartner graduated with honors. I am most appreciative that she was bestowed that honor. I don't know how it happened under my watch. And so God bless all of the teachers who do this full time. That's definitely a low for me and not my ministry. My high on a personal note has been that I have grass, beautiful grass and a beautiful lawn. And I would show you, but it would take a while to walk out the front door and go out there. But I'm so proud of my grass. All of the neighbors stop and talk about the grass. I'm really proud of my grass because I've been so busy that we just haven't had it. And so now we do, and beautiful flowers. Maybe we'll have happy hour on my front porch one day.
Thank you. And I'm sure that your kindergarten graduated with the Teacher of the Year.
Not really.
Judge Edline?
Well, like Judge Jackson, I've had time to work in my yard. And so I have 3 teenagers, so I put them to work, although they thought that that was probably the low part of their COVID time. But, you know, the high point has been slowing down. We had a really busy family life, 3 kids constantly going in different directions with many, many activities. And so slowing down and eating together as a family almost every night was a big change in our life and really nice. You know, another upside to follow along with what everybody said has just been the way that people have come together and been so creative at coming up with solutions. Like, I want to give a shout out because I see some of our interns here. There's a virtual internship, judicial internship program. Judge Doyle's on it with it, but it was a brainchild of Ana Maria Martinez and the Georgia Latino Law Foundation. And for second-year law students throughout the state of Georgia who lost their internship opportunities now have the opportunity to intern virtually with a judge and from different courts, different locations all through the state. So it's just been great to work with people who are so remain dedicated even in the face of these challenges to come up with great creative solutions.
That brings up a great point. So one of the things I want to mention is that was part of the reason we're doing this is because there's obviously a loss of being able to meet in person. And so we wanted to have these virtual meetings so that we could educate law students, second-year law students, first-year associates, summer clerks about the Georgia judiciary, but also lawyers like me who've been practicing for a while who haven't had a chance to see some of the judges in person and just check in and see what y'all are thinking about some of these things. And so depending on what time we finish, we're going to do a question and answer session after this, sort of an Ask Me Anything, where we're going to let y'all fire some questions at the judges. We told them to be ready, and we're going to let you put some questions into the chat, which I will then ask the judges. So we'd love for you to stay on after that. And a plug, because I'm the membership chair of the Atlanta Bar Association, I would love for you to join. If you're not a member of the Atlanta Bar Association, please consider joining. We'd love to have you become a member of our organization. There's a place for you there, and we would love to see you there. So talking about courtrooms and particularly for the younger lawyers, or any lawyers really, myself included, Judge Brasher, what are some practical tips for lawyers practicing in your courtroom? And that could be specifically in regards to practicing in your courtroom now, that we're having to do it virtually, or in the future when hopefully we get back to being able to see you in person.
Sure, a couple of things on each of those categories, if I could. To begin with, I always encourage lawyers who haven't appeared before a judge to talk to colleagues, talk to friends, talk to other folks about how a judge runs his or her courtroom, particular likes and dislikes. I try to share mine anytime I speak to folks because I never want anybody to be surprised. I subscribe to the theory that prepared and at ease lawyers give you the best product. So I try to take the mystery out of what I'm looking for and what I want to do. I am big on asking questions at the outset of arguments or presentations and encouraging the lawyer to just include those naturally into their conversation with me, as opposed to interrupting and asking questions just because I know you've put a lot of time and effort into it and you want me to hear it the way you want me to hear it, but to accommodate those questions in the fullness of time during the presentation. The other thing I'll say is that I think the Zoom paradigm really focuses our attention on being clear and concise in your arguments and presentations. It's really easy whenever we're in a format like this to lose your focus because there's so many things going on the screen, and it's actually more difficult to pay attention passively in a circumstance like this than it is when everybody's together personally. So I just encourage folks to be to the point, to have gotten any documents that you want to use to the judge and to opposing counsel before you get involved in it. It is possible to share documents in Zoom. It's very unwieldy. So I just encourage folks to kind of think through the process and how this process really affects the presentations. So those would be my suggestions. The last thing I'll say is I really want the best use of the time that we have together. And so I will expect lawyers to be prepared. I will be prepared. I read everything before the case starts. I've tried to develop a reputation for that because I want folks to know it and not be surprised by it. But I try to do that because I want you to make the best use of your time. And if you're explaining to me the facts of a case in a summary judgment, using up half of your time to do that, then you're not being as effective as you can. So I try to take that burden off. So those would be my suggestions.
Judge Jackson.
Thank you. I shared the same comments in large part that Judge Brasher just shared. I think we get this question very often when we present during CLEs, and I think that is a very good point, is to maybe call the staff attorney ahead of time to ask questions about how the particular judge conducts his or her courtroom session. Like Judge Brasher, I pride myself on reading everything just because I'm also intellectually very curious about the cases for which we grant, oral arguments. I think the lawyers have gotten really good about saying, when they do and do not need to have an in-person hearing on their motions, and I appreciate that. So it is somewhat frustrating when people ask for an oral argument, if you will, on their motion, and they come and regurgitate everything in the brief, because I've already read it. And so that is when I would say that I'm probably more likely to interrupt the presentation and just ask. But I would say for the most part, I've had lawyers stand at the podium and actually ask if there are specific questions that I have so that they can alter their presentation and answer those questions on the front end. And I'm very impressed when the lawyers are able to do that because I agree. I think that is the most efficient use of time. This, of course, is pre-COVID. Post-COVID, I think people are still trying to work out kinks with WebEx and any of the other platforms that any of the jurisdictions are using for virtual hearings. And so I commend all of you because I've seen people fumble with trying to document share and to have witnesses be available. And I just don't envy you. And so I would like to think that I and the rest of my colleagues are patient enough as we adjust to what might be the new normal for the foreseeable future. But I would just say, maybe get on ahead of time and practice a little bit, using the features, because there are a lot of them on the different platforms on WebEx and on Zoom. And I think there's another one that some other jurisdiction is using that they mentioned that I can't remember right now. But I would like to hope that everyone is experiencing a situation with the trial court judges where we are patient and allowing you to make your presentation virtually. I think that when you announce that you need a certain amount of time, if you would stick to that time frame, that is also critically important. I can tell you in DeKalb, as we think about reopening, we have put a policy in place where no two judges are going to have matters at the same time on the same floor, because we have to observe capacity limits, which means that we also have to observe time limits so that we can have time to clean the space and to have the next set of parties come in. So when you make an announcement, maybe you should, overestimate so that your matter can be heard, because particularly with the scheduling limitations that we're going to have coming up, it may be a while before you can have your matter continued if you run overtime. So that's the piece of advice that I have, and sort of a preview as to at least the direction that we're going in both the state and the Superior Court in DeKalb County.
That's great advice, and I'm actually going to go to Justice Melton now to see how they're handling it. Same question in the Supreme Court.
So I kind of like that we got to hear from the trial court, because there really is a difference between arguing a case, arguing motions at the trial court, especially in front of a jury, as opposed to arguing a case at the Supreme Court or at the Court of Appeals. I think at the trial court level, lawyers can really focus on winning their case. When you come up to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, you really have to be a guardian of the law, help us to be a guardian of the law statewide. And so you really do have to think broadly, and you have to anticipate questions about how your positions fit within the context of that area of the law and even other areas of the law. More so now than ever. I think our court composition as it is much more intellectually curious, as Judge Jackson says. And I've never heard more talk about common law and principles related to common law. That was always a signal for me to check out in law school, but now I have to pay attention. And so you have to be prepared to answer those questions. And so I would say the way to do that is to moot your cases. I think when I was practicing, I might have mooted in front of my wife from time to time, but I think today you really have to get in front of a good bunch of in-tuned lawyers and get them to push you, so you will have thought about and anticipated some very tough questions. So the lawyers that you see coming to our court who are good, they didn't wake up and just argue a case because they're good. They've put in the work on the front end. And then the other thing I would say, two other things, in the course of getting into the weeds and protecting the body of law, you have to be careful about taking cute positions. Because one thing I've seen is you may have a really good argument that you need to get to, and you may throw out a cute position, and buddy, you're going to spend a lot of time defending that, more time than you want. So if you've got something that's just novel, you want to see if it flies, how it flies up the pole, I would say abandon that, because you'll get hijacked in managing your time trying to defend that. And if you do get into it, you need to just say, okay, I give up. Can I please move on to what I really think are my winning arguments? Last thing I would say, don't be afraid to use visual aids, visual highlights. Those are helpful to me, even if it's just an outline of your argument. Those are very good tools. And in the Zoom world, if you've prepared in advance, you can send those in to us, email to our clerk, and she'll make those available. And we'll track right with you as you're making your arguments.
Is that the same in the Court of Appeals, Judge Doyle?
Say yes. As far as the presentation with oral argument and the preparation, I would just say ditto to what he said. In answering that question, just with respect to kind of tips for practicing in the Court of Appeals, I always tell people to make sure you read our rules. This is the biggest mistake I see lawyers make when they don't read the rules or they don't understand appellate practice and briefing, and they end up abandoning what might have otherwise been a good argument on appeal because they didn't flesh out their arguments appropriately according to our procedures or cite to the record, things along those lines. So always go and look at the rules. They're on the website. You can read them, and you should read them every time you file a brief, not just the first time you file a brief in the appellate court, but every single time you do, because they may change, especially when we're in a pandemic. Things change. We've got different time frames that, the Chief Justice has been issuing these orders, about time limits and things like that. And so you just need to make sure that you're always paying attention to those. So that's kind of my tip for practicing in any court really, is read the rules, make sure you know what they are.
And Judge Edline, in your court, you're also handling virtual hearings, is that right? Or are you doing any in-person hearings?
No in-person hearings. We are not going to be starting any in-person proceedings in the state court until July. Well, July's next week. So I don't have anything scheduled. I actually really like the virtual proceedings. I hope to make them continue as part of my practice. And in fact, we're actually going to start our first evidentiary virtual hearings next week. I haven't done that one yet, so we'll see how that goes. It's a learning curve, as some of the other folks have said. Patience is key for the lawyers, patience with each other, patience with the judges too sometimes. As I say, we're trying lots of new things. No one has ever experienced anything like this, and we're going to try some things, and some things will work and some things won't, but we'll learn from it.
That actually, that's a good segue into another question I have. Is there something that you anticipate bringing from this virtual time into your future as a judge? You said you hope to do more of this, of the virtual hearings and such like that. Is that something you anticipate using frequently, and if so, why?
I do anticipate using it. And matter of fact, we're, for example, in the criminal front, we are trying our first in-person arraignment hearing in the middle of July, and we're going to have an option to do it by Zoom. One of the challenges that we have is a technology challenge that we're trying to get to, just in the sense that either we're all virtual right now or we're all in person. So that's a challenge. It's one that we are working on fixing. And I'm confident we will do that. But I think it's a great way to be able to have lawyers or parties appear, especially if it's for a relatively short hearing, rather than coming all the way down to the Fulton County Courthouse and parking and getting through security and all of the concerns that we all have right now with social distancing. And plus, it's just easier sometimes, if I think that the virtual hearings that I have had have gone really well. The lawyers have been incredibly professional and prepared. They have been really polite and not talking over one another. So I really like the virtual hearings, and I hope to continue them. I think that they're a lot more efficient for everyone involved. I know people like to get into a courtroom and see each other, and I'm happy doing that too. But I think it's good to have the flexibility of doing the virtual as well as the in-person.
Is that something that we could see some changes, perhaps not only in state court, as Judge Edline was saying? Is that something we might see in Superior Court as well? What do you think, Judge Jackson?
I think some hearings are appropriate for virtual hearings. I think, as Judge Edline said, some of the shorter matters, the civil matters, civil motions and so forth are appropriate long-term to have as an option. Excuse me, and I'm certainly open and willing to it as long as the attorneys are. But I understand that there's some real concerns from the bar about having certain hearings virtually, particularly those that are evidentiary in nature, where you need to have witnesses come and people are trying to judge credibility and so forth. And so we are endeavoring and working very hard to try to get the in-person hearing scheduled, understanding that there's going to be a backlog. It will take us a while to kind of climb out of this hole. I think it's no secret that there's some very real concerns in certain counties. DeKalb is one of them, with respect to the number of persons who are still testing positive for COVID. I don't know if Justice Melton knew this, but we had 3 positive tests last week in the courthouse. And that was when we were on a skeleton staff. So it's an issue that I'm dealing with daily with the health department director. I just don't want to have a situation where we open up and people get sick. And so that being said, I think the criminal bar really feels very strongly about holding off on a lot of their matters because they want to do them in person. I think the civil bar is a little bit more amenable to the virtual setting. And so we've been able to get quite a bit done during this virtual environment. With respect to criminal arraignments, it's a lot of effort to do it virtually for a little bit of work, because we can't take pleas very quickly in the virtual setting right now. But we are still doing it. Our defendants are over at the jail, in the jail courtroom, and attending via Zoom. We set our technology up to be able to manage that. So I think we're working at it every day. There's even been some talk for us in terms of building out another space over at the jail so that we can take up more matters and so that people are not languishing. But this is a different environment, and it's not one that we were prepared to move forward in right away. There was no rule book for this, even though there was a really nicely well done pandemic guide out of the Supreme Court that helped us to be able to start that process. But again, I think we're all just working really hard. I don't know of any judges that are not thinking about these issues every day and how best to serve the members of the bar. So I'm committed to it. I don't really sleep very much these days for that reason.
You're probably not alone in that, Judge Jackson. And Judge Brasher, I turn to you to ask a similar question. And selfishly, as a family law attorney, I'm curious, because we have a lot of status conferences and things that we have to attend as a family law attorney. And I think a lot of those could be done virtually in the future. So I'm curious if there's anything that Fulton County or you would consider adopting for the future in light of what we've done. Is there anything that you see that's beneficial that you think could be adopted for the future?
Absolutely. I think we've proven to ourselves that a lot of these short proceedings that are primarily informational or that are for planning purposes, that they can be done virtually. And I think if we don't take that lesson, then shame on us. And also, we're going to be doing those things in person to the exclusion of other things that we really have to do. Judge Jackson mentioned the criminal cases that are going to be sucking a lot of the air out of the room for in-court time after this changes, after our present situation changes. So we've got to do that. I think status conferences, I think conferences regarding how the case will go, case management conferences, I think bond hearings, I think pleas to probation. These are all things that we have some serious questions to answer if we do not transition to doing those mostly via virtual proceedings. For Fulton County, we learned a really important lesson early on, and that was that the first inmate to get COVID-19 in the jail got it because he was brought over to the Fulton County Courthouse, and he got it from his lawyer during a pretrial conversation. So we learned that lesson very early, that some people are afraid to be around the inmates that are brought over from the jail. Really, the other way is true. The inmates are in a fairly closed environment. We've done a very good job in Fulton County of the jailers have of keeping folks separate when they first come in. So we've been able to manage that. Knock on wood, we haven't had a positive case in the jail for 5 weeks. Certainly that goes in the opposite direction from what's happening in the general population. So I think we really have to learn those lessons. We've put together a team in Fulton County to try and do that even now while we're in the midst of this, to identify those things that we can continue doing after, and to put resources behind those. So I hope that everybody here will hold us to that as we go forward, because we really need to pay attention to those efficiencies that we're building.
Well, lucky for you, Judge, this is being recorded, so we're going to hold you to that. Judge Melton, same question to you and to Judge Doyle. In the higher courts, do you see any changes that you could implement going forward to help make things more efficient now that we've done things a different way?
Judge Doyle, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about this, and ours is really, we read a lot of papers. So the Zoom oral argument has been our kind of contact with the public. And I have found, and I had 8 oral arguments in one day, went super smoothly. I found that the lawyers, I could actually kind of communicate with them